Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys another 2021 album review. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Mastodon entitled Hushed and Grim, which is out now through Warner Brothers Records. For those of you who aren't familiar with Mastodon, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. They're a progressive kind of metal band from Atlanta, Georgia, my home state. These guys have been around since 2000. And Mastodon, for those of you who don't know, are one of my all-time favorite bands. I've seen these guys live 5 times, and they put on a great show. And Mastodon, I feel like they've pretty much evolved, especially like their first two albums, Remission and Leviathan. They've gotten more kind of like death progressiveness, but also have a lot more heaviness, also like sludginess, and also more harsher vocals. But it wasn't until Blood Mountain where the band kind of expanded on their sound, adding a lot more clean vocals to their sound, and they progressed a lot more from Crack the Sky to Hunter, Once More on the Sun, and then their previous album, Emperor of Sand, which I thought was a pretty good album. But here we are with the band's 8th full-length album, Hushed and Grim. Does it kind of live up or exceed what Emperor of Sand has? Um, excuse me. I think they definitely have. Mastodon always has evolved. Like, they're definitely a band that, while they definitely stick to what they are, but they definitely don't have the formula. They definitely try to like experiment and evolve with their sound, and they have been for a little over 20 years now. Um, and just the vocals on this album is great, from Troy Sanders, Brent Hines, and Braun Daler. Just both of their voices are really great, and I kind of wish Bill was sing a little bit, but he just doesn't want to, I guess. But I think the three of the Troy, Brent, and Braun definitely stepped up with their voices. And just the instrumentation on this album is great. Brent Hines and Bill Kelleher just are riff machines. They definitely come up with some sick riffs, and Brent just knows how to do well with it. The bass on this album is pretty audible. Troy Sanders, I feel like he really stepped it up with the bass. In fact, there's one song on here which I believe is the first time we hear a bass solo on a Mastodon album or song, so which we'll talk about later. And drumming wise, Braun Daler, still one of the best drummers still going right now, and the things that he does is great. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. And this album is also, forgot to mention, is a 2 CD thing, and it's a crazy. This is the first double album I forgot to mention. So yeah, let's just start things off with track 1, called Pain with an Anchor. Now this is something that needs to like warm you up. It's like a sentence that can't be described with like hair splitting, just ear puffs that can only be understood in the context of like sort of like their earlier stuff. And I think this is just something of like Leviathan kind of era Mastodon, and I think it's a great way to kick things off. And then we move on to The Crux. Now The Crux pretty much shows what Braun Daler can do on the drums, and sort of like the requisite sort of like that alternate metal aspects of the sort of like the aggressiveness, tempo breaks, and harmony leads. And even if there isn't like a matching payoff at the end, Sickle and Peace, which I believe is one of the first singles from the new album. It's sort of like, from what I get listening to it, it gives you like the sense of traveling. And imagine like a soul finding its way after leaving behind the mortal coil. And the chorus in this song just comes in really strong and heavy, like death comes and brings with him sickle and peace. And I feel like there is also a sense of triumph within the uncertainty of this new journey. And the solo kind of reminds me of like very 60s, kind of like Jimi Hendrix. It has that kind of like psychedelic kind of vibe to it, which is also another signature of more of Mastodon's more recent work. More Than I Could Chew, I think it's a pretty solid song, has some pretty good riffs in there. The Beast is up next. Now, when I first heard this song, it kind of has like a weird kind of like country feel, but also have like more of a gothic tone with it, with a little bit of a melodic swing through like the beginning verses. And then the song, as it progresses, it gets accelerates, and then the riffs and the rhythm provide like a sensation of flight and like a hurtling towards like a future unknown. And there's like so many amazing guitar solos on this song, but for this song, just really breathtaking. Then we move on to Skeleton of Splendor. Now this brings sort of like the emotional sort of like bleakness expected at this point of the band's career, with like hopeful changes that pretty much keeps this thing really fresh. Next song on the album is called Tear Drinker. Now, Tear Drinker is, in my opinion, is probably the most melodic song on here, and it clearly sounds like a single with plenty of hooks. And as I mentioned before, this has a bass solo from Troy Sanders, has that fuzzy wah that leads, and I just think his bass tone is really I keep saying really a lot, but I think it's a really great that we hear a bass solo for the first time. I mean, I think it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I definitely know it's the first time. And Troy is a really great bassist. Anyway, next up is Pushing the Tides. Now, it has kind of like that old to me, man, it sort of like injects like the 3 minute hits of like lessons from like the Rita Sino's rock and roll to like the more recent albums, and the riffs escalate and just clang with sort of like really just the swaggering, bombastic riffs, and grounded by sort of like a great vocal hook from Bron Daler. Peace and Tranquility is up next, and this is where things really get interesting as it finds like a pocket full of like staggers before regaining its sort of like groovy harmony. Yeah. Dagger is a pretty solid song. But I feel like this song could have done a little bit more. Had It All. Now this song has a peaceful look back, and the notes seem like a ripple in from all sides, and this song winds its way into like the end of a dark loop picked out individually, and this song may seem emotional, but embedded in the album makes sense. And of course, I heard this is dedicated to their their manager Nick John, who had passed away. Okay, so rest in peace, Nick. Next up is Savage Lands. Now this hops forward a rock song, and it also has a little bit of a darkness to it, and it just sticks with the ear, and I feel like this song would be a lot fun live, and it just rolls out. Gobblers of Dregs. Now this is a brooding kind of song until like the halfway, and then it just brightens up and then transforms into something very beautiful, and has some of the great talents that Bron Daler has just owning the show in this song. Eyes of Serpents. Now this song doesn't really get interesting until like the lead break near the end, though Mastodon, I feel like they could have pulled something into like the 90s kind of like sound or style that they had a little bit with their old influences from their older albums. And then we close things out with Gigantum, which is easily one of the best constructed songs on here, and a great way to end this album on a high note. Now overall, Hushed and Grim by Mastodon is a pretty good album, but it's pretty much worth 4 years since Emperor of Sand. And I mean, I know they had like the Coldplay CP that came out like in 2018 or so, but yeah. But overall, so I give this album a score. I'm going to give Hushed and Grim by Mastodon a solid 9 out of 10. Yeah, that's my review of the new Mastodon album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.